And bad morning to everyone out there. Bad morning, all. Um. Okay, so while people pile in here, and our old viewers get to see a familiar channel, familiar faces, get to see Minarch Cookbook again. That's Minarch Cookbook on Twitter. On this channel. Um, Let me just briefly go over why you didn't see that yesterday. It's because YouTube is a pack of diseased, rotting cunts. And what they did to us yesterday was actually started 2 days ago, right after the stream ended, when it should have ended, but the hangout stopped and the stream kept going. Um, so what happened to us was, um, we couldn't stream on the channel y'all are used to. We couldn't stream on the channel y'all had notifications turned on for, because we were already streaming there, even though we weren't streaming anything, because they wouldn't let us stream for a long time. And there's no way to manually terminate streams. And, ooh, this was the zinger. The fucking diseased, malignant, cancerous, rotting cunts at YouTube said that I'm not eligible for help. Just to email them, I would have to contact the help forums. So you know what I did? I looked at the help forums for similar issues and found out that YouTube doesn't help those sorts of people. They don't help those sorts of people because those issues weren't resolved in any of the requests that I saw. So they don't help people who are having this issue, and they didn't respond in the forums. They won't let you email them, and they won't let you manually terminate a stream. So that's another part of it. If the stream for some reason gets hijacked, you're fucked. And so it's with that in mind that I decided to finally start the Bad Morning News YouTube channel and DTube and DLive. And they also have a Facebook page, which will be posting video relatively shortly. So you'll be able to find simulcasts of the stream to those three services relatively shortly. Because fuck YouTube, and also because I've promised to do this at the 25th episode anyway. However, because we were sorting those problems out yesterday, I didn't actually upload the videos to the new YouTube channel and to the DTube. So I'll be doing all of that relatively shortly here. And then tomorrow you should be able to find us at our new home on the Bad Morning News YouTube channel, Facebook page, and DLive channel. That is until they shut us down too. Everybody could shut us down. This is the problem with centralized technology. You are constantly deep throating somebody else's fucking large ass sausage, even if it's a bankster, even if it's the CIA, even if it's us talking about Bilderberg and Elon Musk and the New World Order and hyper technologism. You can't do it if you're trusting somebody else's technology. Ultimately, we need our own platforms. So I'm looking into those too. But anyway, with all that out of the way, housekeeping. This is brought to you by Brave, the ad-resistant, tracker-resistant browsing experience. It's also brought to you by the Cash App, $1 in Bitcoin wallets that you can use with a Visa card. It's also brought to you by Liberty Mugs, mugs that you can use to consume fluid while also pissing off your coworkers. So consider becoming involved in any of those things using the link in the description. Those things are things that you can do to support the things that we do and support the things that we're doing to get away from the things that YouTube does, because the things that YouTube does is forcing a large salty sausage down all of our fucking throats, attached to their big pack of rotting, malignant, fucking formaldehyde-smelling cunts. Anyway, we've got a news story for you shortly.
Don't mince your words, mate. See how you feel.
I've had Uber
So.
Monster also, so I'm fucking energetic-ish.
I didn't notice. Well, where do you want to start, mate? I got a bit just to let everybody know, if you want to see episode 25, it's
Yes,
currently the
yeah.
only video on my channel.
All right, yeah,
So
I
just
can't
to
believe
let
I
you
forgot
know.
to fucking say that. Yeah, so I'll be downloading that a little bit later today, and it'll be available on all the other platforms. But for now, the only place you can find it is on the what was it? The Anarchic Wolf
Lupinate the
channel.
Anarchic Wolf channel.
Yeah, yeah. So just look up
So,
the Anarchic Wolf, or just look up the Bad Morning News hashtag. That is unless it's being suppressed. You said that it might be being suppressed.
well, this is the other thing. I couldn't get the hashtag to tag the way that you did. I don't know if you did something special. B, when I tried to put it in the news and politics category to begin with, because I set it up as an event. A few hours later, I went to double check everything was ready to go and that nothing had been messed up, and it changed the category from news and politics to people and blogs.
Ooh.
So yes, that was very unusual. So
At
yeah,
least they're
apparently
acknowledging we're people with blogs.
yes, exactly. Despite the fact that we're actually reporting news events, apparently this doesn't qualify as news. So yeah, I guess unless you're part of the mainstream media network, you can't be news. And if I'm YouTube, I guess I'm gonna have to use this wish list thing. We're sorry. Because it's about the only way I can feel is it's basic. Again, South Park, BP, or DP,
Yeah.
as the case may be. It's just that's about all you'll get from them now. Is we're
Well,
sorry. We're not going to change, but we're sorry.
and at least BP responds to people. They're just fucking jerk offs about it. This
Mm.
diseased pack of formaldehyde smelling rotten cunt sausage fucking down our throat motherfuckers. These people won't even respond to this issue.
It's
Mm.
because they're afraid of us, man. They see the power we have.
Yeah. 4 viewers. All of you 4 viewers are more powerful than the entirety of YouTube. I hope you know that.
It's all about sowing the seeds, mate. That's the thing, and the power of the idea. Some of the ideas that we've got is significantly better than the ones that they're promoting. And that's the
what
reason
I'm
why they
saying. They
censor you.
can't tolerate even one newly awoken person, you know?
They can't tolerate nuance or any kind of context. It's either good or bad, and if you don't agree, then off to Gulag or Googleog.
I've actually seen it spelled recently, just Goolag. I thought that was amusing.
Googleog. That's the other good one of it. So yeah, I actually purposefully looked for articles that had absolutely nothing to do with Google and nothing
Well,
to do
good,
with
because
tech.
I've got more articles about cops raping kids.
Oh, great. So I figured I'd go with something from Australia to kick things off. This is basically,
even though they can't kick.
well, no, don't knock Australia, mate. Australian rules football is the hardest thing I have ever seen on as a sport.
Well, then you've never seen UFC, the actual sport.
UFC, apart from mixed martial arts, let's put it that way. It's not supposed to be a focus.
Not to throw the stream off focus here either, but having seen Kabaddi played, that can't be easy either. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, same with ice hockey. I mean, that's like a skill on its own, is that you have to learn how to use your ankles that way.
Anyways,
we're sports now. We're gonna fuck you up.
Anyway. Look, if you want to do a sports network, I can do that kind of thing. We can go that way.
Well, actually,
this isn't particularly a sports article, but go on.
Well, I mean, that is sort of one of the things in the future, possibly, is that we'll intermix like what's really going on with sports news instead of sports news with what's really going on, in order to fuck with the people who want to watch a primarily like sports focused stream. So that's a possibility. I was kicking that around in my mental office a bit ago. So I mean, there's a possibility you could host one of those like exclusively. But anyway, well, that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, and as a quick aside, actually, there's a way of doing like logical debating that way as well. Personal foul, circular reasoning, 5 yards.
Exactly.
Right.
So yeah,
news stories.
News stories. Let's bring it back home, guys. Right. So this is from Aussie ABC. Is about the only way I can put this. It's mobile.abc.net.au. And title is Leadership Chaos, Scrapping Tax Cuts, and the NEG Are Bad for Business, Industry Leaders Warn, by Elise Morgan, updated at about midnight my time. The latest episode of Who Wants to Be a Prime Minister and the jettisoning of tax and energy policies is testing business leaders who say they just want certainty. Instability is the enemy of consumer confidence and our ability to invest. We are keen on having certainty, of course, Woolworths boss Brad Banducci told the business program this week. Well, Mr. Banducci can be certain that corporate tax cuts are gone. That's probably not what he meant. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull's government has given up on its plan to slash taxes for big businesses after it failed to secure the support of the Senate, crossbenchers, and One Nation. The Business Council of Australia, BCA, came out firing, saying Australia was kidding itself. Quote, if we think we can impose one of the highest tax rates in the developed world on Australian businesses and still expect them to thrive, invest, and create jobs. Company tax cuts still have more public support than any political party, BCA chief Jennifer Westacott said. And so, yeah, basically, I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. Companies are now being told to start preparing for a Labour government, who has promised to abolish cash refunds for excessive dividend imputation credits. Labour says this change will only affect 8% of Australian taxpayers, but BHP is sitting with 11.7 billion in stored credits, which it will need to rush out the door before an election. The tax cuts already given to small and medium-sized businesses are also in doubt after opposition leader Bill Shorten did a double backflip on repealing tax cuts for businesses with a turnover between 10 million and 50 million. Recently installed chairman of AMP, David Murray, told the business he's seen plenty of leadership spills and thrills over his time and called the latest drama nothing but a big gossip. The only certainty in Australian business is uncertainty, he said, and businesses just need to get on with business. So, yeah, basically, it sounds as if Australia's got exactly the same sort of problems that Britain is facing with Brexit, in a way, except that in particular, they can't seem to work out what the fuck to do with their economics. They can't keep the tax rate where it is, but they probably can't fund what they want to fund without keeping it where it is. So it's the old administration catch-22. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, and there's no good out. And it sucks to be you if you're a politician in Australia.
Well, first of all, good, because no politician deserves an easy existence.
No.
And, this is really only a problem because the state is the state anyways. Like, we all know the meme, taxation is theft, but seriously, Jesus fucking Christ. These people are openly debating just how much they should steal to give out to whoever they fucking want to give it out to. There's literally, the way you made it sound is they're not even pretending to consider the taxpayer here.
Oh, no, of course not.
Literally just hand into the pocket. And again, we can meme about it all we want, but it's so goddamn awful.
Well, and also keep in mind, this is why Kim.com gets to stay there, because their politicians are openly corrupt. And good, I'm not knocking Kim. I like Kim. I like everything he does with like very few exceptions. And the only exception, I think, is the fact that he would have a lot more energy if he could lose that weight. But, fucking, and there might be more, but the fact that he's fat is the only thing in my brain that throws me off about him. But like separate to, well, I mean, yeah, but it's also the fact that he could probably make the choice. I mean, you look at early pictures of him, he wasn't terrible. Um, it seems like he's making the choice and that he's he's become the physical embodiment of the villain, as sort of like part of his persona. And whatever, it's his life, it's his body. I'm not going to decide what has to happen with it. All I'm saying is, Kim, if you decide you're listening, first off, I cannot wait to read the white paper on your Kim coin and that new platform you're building, because I will be one of the first people to sign up. Fuck this gay earth. But just try keto. You can eat fatty fucking meat, You can eat like breads as long as they're made with almonds and coconuts. Just try the keto diet. I promise you will not regret it. I have had success stories on this channel that you can listen to. Just skip the Free Rifleman. A few other people I think have had it as well. And I cannot recommend it enough. Just saying, Kim, if you're listening, Kim.
And you know what? Even if you're not Kim, try the keto diet anyways. It's freaking fantastic. I also cannot endorse it enough. Anyways.
So yeah, Dexter, do you have any ones you want to cover? Next, or
the only ones I saw were the ones those 3 you linked in the Discord this morning.
Fair enough.
So unless you want me to go through one of those, I am.
You can do if you fancy. Or you can just provide counterpoints, because we desperately need that sometimes.
Yeah, I'm happy to just keep pitching commentary here if you guys want to keep pulling headlines.
Fair enough. Well, I don't want to hog the show, so Jeremiah, do you have one for us?
Well, I don't know. After I took fucking 11 minutes insulting YouTube, I think that hogging the show would be an extreme thing to say.
Okay.
But let me just open up fucking this thing. This is another article from the freethoughtproject.com. It's cop convicted multiple times for raping children and never sent to prison strikes again. Oh, and look at his fucking face. If I knew how to do the screen sharing thing better, I would pull this up, because oh my god, you should look at this guy's diseased, sunken eyes. Oh man, everybody's just ill. Everybody's just fucking. Okay, I got a California cop and serial child rapist was allowed to victimize multiple children because the state repeatedly refused to send him to prison. Salinas, California, highlighting the sheer lunacy of blue privilege and the broken justice system, a former California Highway Patrol officer was found guilty of raping children twice and never went to jail. Now, this predator may finally be sent to prison, but only after his 3rd conviction for horrifying crimes against children. Jacob Mark Duenas, a former Monterey County-based California Highway Patrol officer, was found guilty earlier this month of brutally and repeatedly raping an 8-year-old boy. The abuse happened when Duenas was training to be a law enforcement officer. Prior to this conviction, Duenas pleaded no contest to multiple charges of molesting 2 girls ages 13 and 14 while he worked as a CHP officer. Flexing his blue privilege, after he was found guilty of sexually abusing the girl, Duenas served no time in jail because this pedophile was never locked up. A few years later, he struck again. This time, his victim was a 10-year-old boy. Again, he was arrested, and again, he did not go to jail. As KSPW reports, at the time of the sentencing, Butte County, I think that's Butte. It might be Butte. I don't know. Fucking, I've never been over to Butte, whatever that is. So
B-U-T-T-E?
Yeah, that's Butte.
It is Butte.
Butte.
Yeah.
It's Butte.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm in SoCal, but there's some places in it I've never been. Shocker of shocks. I mean, SoCal itself is pretty much, I think, larger than Britain anyways, so.
California is a pretty damn big state, to be honest, and it only takes about 12 hours to go. Yeah, it only takes about 12 hours to go from one end of Britain to the other by car.
Yeah, but Butte County Deputy District Attorney Matt Taylor told KRCR, "My feelings on the sentencing is summed up in one word: surprised." What makes this case unusual is that you have a psychologist independently commissioned by the court who made a finding that Mr. Duenas was a pedophile and a sexual predator. And regardless of that, the judge sentenced Mr. Duenas to probation. Now, that is the monster. Now that this monster has been convicted of raping a fourth child, he may finally be locked up. It is important to point out that serial pedophiles like Duenas may have far more victims than the ones who come forward. Oftentimes, pedophiles force their child victims into silence by threatening them with harm if they tell someone. Side note, or threatening their parents or their friends or anybody they care about. Indeed, Duenas even bragged about this to his aunt. During the latest trial, Duenas' aunt testified that Duenas admitted to her that he was good at secretly sexually abusing children without others finding out, and that he said, quote, "I have been fighting demons for years." So there's not much more that needs to be said about this, except fuck you, Duenas, because you have not been fighting demons. You have been sexually abusing kids. You have not been fighting demons. You are the demon. You sack of shit.
Yeah, you can't claim to be fighting a demon if you give in to the demon. Fighting the demon is not giving in to it. That's kind of what the term means.
Or
You don't
repenting,
say-
which means to turn against.
Yes, you have to admit that you've been doing these things, which, to be fair, in no contest does technically state. It does basically say that I'm not questioning this. I'm accepting that this happened.
No, it's not. It's saying I'm not contesting it. It's a wish-wash between not guilty and guilty.
Yeah, and it's a special one that I think isn't afforded to most people, is it?
It's not afforded in many cases, but those cases are increasing in volume.
Interesting. Didn't realize that.
I
But,
mean,
yeah,
at least this. And okay, I don't have numbers on that at this particular point. Unlike yesterday when I had plenty of numbers, the best numbers. I don't have numbers on that, but what I can verify is that I've seen a fuck ton of headlines talking no contest recently, and I can't seem to find many headlines from the past, before the past decade about them. So either journalists just didn't know about it, and now they're like, oh, I can say that in an article, and they all just did it, or fucking. It's being done more now. So I would guess it's being done more now. I would guess it's simply more prevalent. But anyway.
Just with the increase in the amount of both criminal and civil litigation going on here, you have to think it's probably just increasing in frequency,
well, right.
I would imagine.
And the prison system is
inevitable.
You're right, exactly. It's a natural consequence of how things work here.
Funny that.
A natural consequence of an unnatural system. Yeah, let me just prosecute you for putting this in your body, for going a little too fast, for turning right or left when there was nobody there to be harmed by it, for blowing a light when nobody was there to be harmed by it, for jaywalking, for sleeping on top of a fridge in a motel room in this one town I forget the name of. Just countless people just in jail for dumb reasons. Oh! And by the way, since I think we might have talked about Meacham, but haven't talked about him for a while, here's the recap. Because I don't have a link to this, but he had his trial finally after it got pushed back for months. And after he had his trial, he came back and reported what the verdict was, which was that he was guilty and that he was to be fined a small amount. He's not going to pay the fine. He tried to appeal, but his application for appeal to both of the places he had to apply to, I think that he had applied to too.
I can go into that if you want, because I did
Sure.
see the video as well. So in Scotland, there's sort of a double appeal process. You have to kind of appeal twice. The first one basically is a yes, no, you might actually be in with a shout. And the second one's the formal. and he basically got a rejection on both counts, which is a bit overkill, basically. But the bit that got me particularly was that the judge ruled that there is in no way, shape, or form is it possible to interpret the video as a joke. And to claim that that interpretation is valid is grossly offensive. That is basically the problem. The claim now of innocence of basically trying to be grossly offensive is the gross offense almost. And on top of that, the judge very wishy-washily tried to censure the guy's lawyer and basically said he was basically treading on thin ice for representing this man. It was really quite off from my perspective. It was very unprofessional. You don't attack somebody's lawyer in a summing up of him trying to do what he's paid to do and defend his client. That's really quite mind-boggling. But yeah, his claim that nobody could interpret this as anything but offensive, to me, is actually quite offensive and incredibly narrow-minded.
Well, and okay, so what offends me? The idea that they think the common man should be dumb enough to accept a ruling like this. That's what's insulting. Because not that they think that we are, because most people are, as I pointed out yesterday. But fucking the fact that they think that the average person should be this stupid, so this is what they're cementing in a supposedly first world nation. That would be astonishing if I weren't a cynical asshole already.
So, if I can take just a little bit different of a tack on this story here, I'm sure you gentlemen, being who you are already extremely woke to this, but something the listeners might not consider, and something that I know for a fact most average citizens out there in the world don't consider, is just how close to a judge-dominated and judge-controlled system we have. With the expansion of bureaucratic functions and with lawyers more and more relied on for everything, judges are consolidating power, not just in our system, but in every system. And that's extremely dangerous because while we don't have any control over our politicians either, judges, at least here in the U.S., often have very long terms or even lifetime appointments. And the ability of judges to just dictate and create law at whim is a horrible and horrifying idea, and it's becoming more of a reality every day.
Well, it's pretty much always been a reality in Britain, from what I've been able to gather, is that...
Well, right. And isn't that the difference between Britain and the US, that Britain is far more parliamentary? Like everybody, that's the reason that Killing Joke song talked about how debate was heavily encouraged, but really it's heavily encouraged because they want to encourage the citizens to participate in the jerk-off process.
It is effectively, to some extent, that, if I'm honest. I mean, if you watch the BBC coverage of the debates when they happen, because those sorts of things are really quite recent over here, if I'm honest. Every time, before I came over here, it was very rare to have the candidates debating in a public forum. That really came about after the news agencies, in particular in the TV channels, of which there were about 5 with the exception of the cable ones. They basically saw how much money America was making off of its entire election process and how it turned into basically an 18-month theater play that would be taken from state to state to state with loads of coverage everywhere. That kind of environment is something that really breeds money. And the news agencies over here wanted a piece of that. So they really started challenging. And there's no reason not to have a debate about who should be in charge, because That is a very sensible thing, personally. I think nobody should be in charge, but that's just me. And hopefully you too as well, to be quite frank. But the um, the debates over here, when you watch like the BBC coverage, whenever it doesn't matter which one is speaking, whoever is speaking, they will get the positive being basically the one influencing the crowd no matter what. Okay. So, and then the next one will speak, and all of a sudden the crowd is influenced by them no matter what. And then the next one will speak, and so on and so forth. And everybody who speaks basically is the majority winner of that question in the debate. There's never any real indication of what's actually going on when you're watching the BBC, simply because they're not allowed to show bias. So if the audience is biased to one of the candidates, they can't really give it away. Which is what happened when I think it was Cameron and Brown did their debates with Nick Clegg. Basically, when Brown was speaking, Brown was the most popular candidate. When Clegg was speaking, Clegg was the most popular candidate. And when Cameron spoke, he was the most popular candidate. It was just how they work.
Of course, they're not allowed to show bias there, but they can definitely try to instill bias with people like Stefan Molyneux, Lauren Southern, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Jordan Peterson.
Oh, of course. Let's not beat around the bush here. The media over here is incredibly liberal on TV. It is shocking.
And the only exception is The Sun, and that's a Murdoch joint.
Well, no, actually, there are a couple exceptions. Telegraph tends to be fairly conservative focused, but most of it's print. That's the problem I've got with it. If you like a conservative viewpoint in Britain, you are pretty much limited to print media to a large extent. It's quite
unless
sad.
You're willing to find your outlet. Like anybody in Britain could look at this show if they wanted to.
True. And a lot of people have taken to YouTube or other locations and looked to alternative news over here. A lot of the big names that are quite popular on the conservative side actually have their foundation here in Britain.
Like Paul Joseph Watson.
Yes. I was thinking more Sargon, to be honest.
But that's just what the liberal media would have you believe.
This is the thing. I personally find that in Britain, if you're working class, you're more likely to be conservative now. Simply because
we'll get over that soon.
It's a bit weird. They are noticing that you're more likely to be, I should say, right-leaning. It's very hard to define. I don't want to call them conservative because that pairs them up with the Tories, and
you could just call them progressive.
Well, I don't consider it. I consider both anybody who's collectivist regressive, but that doesn't really help delineate anything for me.
Except regressive is a reaction term to the progressives. So yes, you could make that statement very specifically. As long as you're using political science as the reason you're saying it.
The argument is there for that, but that's just going to continue to muddy and murky the waters for people who might not.
Well, right, but so is like the term conservative.
Well,
I have a lot of opinions on the history of that term and its usage, but that's for another show.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I liked it the other day when somebody put it like conservatives want to conserve their wealth, and so they have all these policies put in place where they can fucking game the system against the common man and get more wealthy. I like that description. That description works for me.
It's a bit biased from my perspective because it does. I prefer Jordan Peterson.
Both conservatives and liberals, so I mean, I don't know.
I personally go with the one Jordan Peterson tends to use the traditional conservative argument. Conservatives are traditionalists basically, and they have a lot of stock in traditions, and some traditions have very logical foundations.
That
and are
sounds
valuable.
Regressive, but okay.
Well, I mean,
Do we have
don't
more
quite
news
know.
we want to talk about
Yeah,
first, gentlemen?
Thank you for that one, mate, because I actually do have one from. I figured I'd do a bit on Oceania, because we've never really covered that part of the globe that much before in the show. So I figured we'd do a show for them, just in case somebody decides to pick this up from in Australia and New Zealand.
And also, by the way, just on that note, Oceania, for anybody who doesn't know, is the fictional city state in George Orwell's 1984, and it's also the name of a great album, fucking fantastic, by a band named Surveillance. You can find them at surveillance23.bandcamp.com and listen to their album Oceania. It is really fucking good stuff, and it's also got fantastic messages behind it. Really good anti-government stuff.
And since you mentioned Orwell, hashtag make Orwell fiction again. Anyway, this is from newshub.co.nz. How much are New Zealand's MPs really worth? By Scott Palmer. Printed today. MP salaries are back in the headlines after the government announced it will freeze all their allowances and salaries for a year. Most ministers in cabinet earn nearly $300,000. Now, this is New Zealand dollars, mind you. Around 250,000 more than the average New Zealand salary of about 50,000. A backbench MP with no additional responsibilities earns $160,000, while the base primary teacher salary starts at $48K. So straight away, you can see that apparently you can earn 6 times as much as a cabinet minister as the average New Zealand citizen, and 4 times as much as a primary school teacher if you are just a backbencher, not really doing anything. So it's good to be the king, isn't it? Infamously embattled former National MP Todd Barclay pocketed a sweet 40,000 by refusing to resign 3 months before the last election, while others have taken pay cuts to serve. Are they being underpaid, or do we need to offer more? That is the title of the next section, which is why I just had to say it. Some MPs are underpaid and others are overpaid, said Taxpayers Union economist Joe Ashcroft. For many, being a member of parliament will be the best paying job they will ever have, while others have to take significant pay cuts to embark on a career of public service. It's easy to imagine that more highly skilled, well-educated people will run for parliament if MPs were paid more than they are currently. ACT leader David Seymour thinks the amount being paid is about right, but wants to restrict the number of high-paid ministers to 20. There are plenty of MPs who are earning more in Parliament than they would in the private sector, Mr. Seymour told News Hub. MPs get used to the baubles and never leave. Look at Winston Peters. How would he fare in the real world? He says taking a pay cut shouldn't dissuade people who genuinely want to serve the public from standing for office. So how should MPs' pay be determined? Currently, salaries are set by the Independent Remuneration Authority, and increases are pegged to increases in the wider public service. Average salary increases across the private sector, which have been lower, have no direct influence. Dr. Eric Crampton, the chief economist at libertarian think tank, the New Zealand Initiative, said this can create the perverse incentive of linking pay to high public sector salaries, encouraging the government to give pay rises to teachers, doctors, and nurses. Dr. Crampton said he likes mechanisms that link pay to broader economic performance, and others agree. MPs should be rewarded when they raise the living standards of ordinary Kiwis. That's why it's important to link our pay to increases in productivity and wages in the real economy, Mr. Seymour says. He goes on a little bit more, but is a little bit heavy on that front. But it is worth also noting the revolving door exists in New Zealand as well, because big private sector payouts exist for MPs. When they leave Parliament, New Zealand MPs find a variety of roles in sinecures. Some move into the executive and board positions, others go into highly paid lobbying, often in the same area they oversaw as ministers. Quote, most MPs land on their feet when their former colleagues give them cushy board roles or ambassadorships, Mr. Seymour says. Both National and Labour have made a habit of handing out jobs for the boys and girls. Sir John Key has been appointed to the board of directors of Air New Zealand, as well as chairman of ANZ Bank New Zealand. Former Green Party MP Russell Norman is now executive director of Greenpeace. National MP Catherine Rich is the CEO of New Zealand's Food and Grocery Council. And the former Minister of Health, Dr. Jonathan Coleman, left to run the private sector health company Acurity. Finding work as a former MP is much easier than most people, making a difficult career transition. Mr. Ashcroft told NewsHub, there are an array of ambassadorships and boards that are regularly filled by previous MPs, while lobbying firms and companies seeking subsidies always find it useful to have experienced politicians stalking the streets of Wellington in search of government largesse. Apparently, one of the things is being is a side article, by the way. They're trying to demand that lobbyists be actually named. Because there's apparently there's 16 people who are lobbyists that have direct access to Parliament from a security perspective, but their names and organizations are secret. And yeah, all's not cushy in the Isle of the Kiwi,
So,
to say the least.
just right off the bat, I'd like to say that if public servants, quote unquote, must exist, I don't think it's unreasonable to demand a vow of poverty from them. And the fact that we pay these people at all is absolutely terrible. The fact that they are being forced to take a year off of their salaries while working in government, I think, is some of the best news we could ask for. So, now all of that being said, I'd also like to add the fact that lobbyists a set of lobbyists can just stroll in and out of the Parliament seems absurd. I mean, obviously it happens. That's how power structures and the Iron Triangle concept works, but it's still just
Well, and you know,
horrible to
to
think
be
about.
completely fair, to be completely fair and balanced, and you know, ointment approved by the FDA and shit. Fucking the average American congressperson, or House representative, the average American senator will tell you that they joke about each other's Senate presence. They joke about each other's being there on the floor for votes to begin with.
Yep.
And when people just don't show up, it can oftentimes push a policy. And that's when you start to really look at this thing from an elitist perspective of, well, if we want to sway policy, all we have to do is get these people on boats and planes during the votes. You know, but like, to be real specific, the entire world has problems with lack of attendance in official proceedings, and this is a good example. I just don't want to get people to get the feeling that that we're saying this is exclusive to New Zealand, because it's not, and it's absolutely something that needs to be solved everywhere.
That's true.
This is something that happens anywhere where you have people voting on policies.
Well,
Very
and of course,
true.
you know, people being paid to make policies, because let's be completely straight.
Well, yes.
They're not fucking voting on shit.
Yes, right.
There's one thing that Dexter mentioned that's actually quite important, because he was complaining about the lobbyists being able to just walk in to what was going to, like, Parliament and whatnot, and just talk to the ministers basically whenever they want.
I wonder if they've got a bankster attached to their leg as well by a manacle.
Possibly, but point of order, it's not that different in the US. I'm sorry to say.
No, I totally understand that it's not, and it infuriates me here too. I know it's all just a shell game anyways, but Jesus Christ, it's a bad look though.
Yeah, it's a very bad look, and that's why the news agencies are actually demanding people get named here. But the bit that actually gets me in the US is, it's not, you don't even need the politicians. Politicians are too fucking busy trying to make campaign money to actually do anything regarding writing legislation.
Around looking for their handouts.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking for their money for the next year's campaign that's going to have to start for their Senate House. Even though they've got 3 years there, they've got to start campaigning now, because their fellow senators are going to be up for re-election soon as well, and they need to help fund their campaigns and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
they've got no fucking time to actually write legislation.
A
And
real
so
the people
shame
who
to
actually
me has
do it-
been-
In the immortal words of Immortal Technique, politicians in my pockets for a few hundred G's. So if I'm ever in court, my assets will never freeze.
You see, it's not them who write the law, though. It's the civil servants. And I use this term civil ironically, obviously, because they're far
What
from
about
it.
servant?
Yeah, I'd say servant is also ironic in this situation. It's the beautiful oxymoron that means exactly the opposite of what it is. They're not civil and they're masters, so they ain't servants because they get to dictate how you get to do whatever you want to do.
It is just the most surreal word game that's ever been imagined. The way we name these positions,
But
I
they're
know.
so humble on stage.
Oh yeah, they're very good at being. They're very good at seeming. That's what they're trained to be. I mean, again, I cannot recommend it enough. It's hilarious and it's wonderful, and it's on Netflix. And it's Yes Prime Minister and Yes Minister. Yes Prime. Watch them in order. It's worth
Also,
it.
House of Cards.
House of Cards is good too, but if you just want a laugh and you don't want the drama,
Wait, you don't laugh at House of Cards? I think it's fucking hilarious.
Oh, I laugh at it only because I think, yep, that's pretty much what it's like. Because I mean, I lived in DC or on the outskirts and went into DC and knew most of like the kids of the people who were kicking about at the time.
For those who don't know, Lupin grew up in Virginia.
Yeah, and that crowd, it's very unique in a way, and very
that feels
much
like
the
a
same.
generous word to be using, but
Yes, it is a very generous word to be using. It's sort of a unique setting, and it's replicated all over the place. And if you know what you're looking for, you'll see it. It just
can kick your
really
dad's
hard to
ass.
describe it, huh?
My dad can kick your dad's ass.
It's more like my dad can sue your dad's ass. Well, my dad will save your dad if he had a heart attack. Well, my dad's the ambassador. It's that kind of level of elitism they tend to get into. And I just didn't play it.
Hours.
I never even tried to play it because I wasn't that well off. I was on scholarship, and my mom had to sacrifice a lot to put me through that.
Also, you'd have to work on the same grounds that a pentagram has literally been laid on for the streets. So, just saying.
The thing is that these people are very unique in how they work, and it is basically, imagine the old boys network. Just magnified to the nth degree. They all know each other. They all work with each other. They all have their own interpolitical schemes, and they all try to play the game, but not the same game politicians play. So House of Cards is brilliant if you want to see how politics works. Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister is brilliant if you want to see how the civil service actually works. And that's why I recommend it to people, because most people don't appreciate just how much of a ball and chain that bastard is, and just how corrupt. Because it's the civil servants who, in the US, who play the lobby revolving door. They're the ones who make the rules, and they're the ones who then go on to the lobbyists, who then send them into think tanks, which then make rules that benefit those lobbies.
Right, it goes
That's
back
how
to
it
that
physically
concept I
works.
raised earlier. I mean, say what you will about the field of political science, but they do have that entry-level concept of the iron triangle, and it's a beautiful look at just how corrupt those feedback loops can get. You know,
yeah, and they are designed to be that way.
By design, yeah.
Yes, and most people don't want to accept that, and that's up to them, but it really is by design.
So we've got a few things in chat to bring up.
Cool.
Let me just scroll to the top here. We got Camp 002 saying D Live for the win. Yep. We'll be on D Live relatively shortly. We'll be simulcasting to D Live, Facebook, and YouTube. So you'll be able to see us on all of those platforms. And then, if I can get fucking my fucking head out from betwixt my groin, I can cross post it to Minds as well, and also possibly BitChute. Because the thing is, it's a decent amount of work to do that anyway, and I don't have a staff, so there's always room for bullshit, but we'll discuss that at another point. And it happened on YouTube, as Danielle clarified for Finian there. Finian says sports leaves. Well, I mean, yeah, but this sports thing would actually be for the people who would only stick around for sports, and it would keep people apprised of the sickest shit that we've been covering, and more, in a interstitial sports format with a bottom ticker saying this is what you should really be reading. So it's going to be an interesting thing if I can get this network looking the way I want it to, and it's going to be an interesting thing if I can avoid being as much of an asshole as I can be for my ENTJ bullshit. But anyway, separate subject. We'll talk about that another time as well, because we've only got 5 minutes left. Vinian says we're not welcome here. It's not on G Plus, Twitter, or Fascist Book 2. Best option is to walk away. Parentheses, I know you're building an audience though. And I said it's fucking annoying, honestly. Already countless instances of YouTube, quote, not working in one way or another, and I don't even have enough people to be monetized. They're either afraid of me or new users. And
well, just on that note, it's a work in progress, however you want to solve it. The concepts of voice and exit are very real, and finding the right balance to strike between them is not always easy.
Yeah, well, and Camp says exit over voice, so
I tend to agree with him, but there's arguments for both.
Well, I'm just diversifying.
Absolutely.
Finian says, I love keto. I fast daily too. Camp says, I have to get into that. Finian says, I only eat for a 9-hour window, no calories outside it, to force my body to burn fat at the end of the fast right before I eat. We're already living in the zombie apocalypse. Okay, so I guess those were separate subjects. I mean, unless you're eating people. But yes, absolutely we are. Danielle says, what is going on in California? Well, California is going on in California. I think that's all that needs to be said. And she says it's insane. Well, I mean, it is insane, but only because, like I said yesterday, people don't give a shit. The moment people start giving a shit, this will change. Fungus says it's on fire and also socialist. Yeah, and you could also say it's on socialist and also fire. So, yes, both. Finian says, locked up, just shoot him in the head twice, talking about the sick, depraved, fucking sunken-eyed ass little grape of a cop.
You know what? If I can comment on that real quick, I did see a news story going around yesterday, too. I didn't bring this up because it's more good news or cheery news than anything. But a cop, a former deputy down in Texas, did just get killed in prison. And he had been in prison because he was a child molester. So, sometimes they get what they deserve.
And we would never recommend doing anything illegal like that, of course.
Of course not.
God, no. I'd never advocate for it. But at the same time, I probably won't be ashamed it happens.
Yes.
Now,
and Finian says he is the demon. I tell my children all the time there are no monsters. Humans are the monsters. What were you going to say, Lupinit?
I was just going to quickly say, if we're mentioning some good news, the UK has actually started releasing paperwork around a no-deal Brexit, because I think everybody knows that's what the fuck is going to be on the cards. And to be quite frank, it's what I was kind of hoping for. So I didn't really want to bring it up in the main context or the article in full, because about the only thing that they're mentioning at like the start of the article is how credit card fees are going to go up. And We're going to run out of medical supplies, and all of this is the planes are going to fall from the sky. Honestly, it's Project Fear all over again over here, and most of the conservatives, including like Jacob Rees-Mogg, are coming out saying that WTO rules, they'll suffice. Any of the arguments that are being made at the moment are absolute absurdities and gross misrepresentations, absurdly overstated kind of things. It's any kind of impulse buying by the government is basically just being cautious, as they put it. And I don't even understand why they would impulse buy any goods at this point. If you're going on WTO and you get better rates, why buy extra now?
Well, and also, I mean, this will give people the opportunity, if it does work, to restructure Britain's economy to be less reliant on foreign goods anyway, because that was one of the major concerns.
Yep, and there's another potential option that nobody seems to be looking at, which is always to become a tax haven.
Oh yeah,
which is always a bit fun, and that could make Britain quite competitive in amongst places like the Cayman Islands or Switzerland.
yeah. Of course, that's never going to happen with people
anyone
like
lower
Queen.
taxes anywhere, though.
Yeah. But speaking of that, Finian says, I'd pay them nothing. He says that's what they should be paid to be a leader. If they want to lead in their community, they should do it voluntarily. All paid politicians shouldn't exist. And my response to that, which I already posted in the chat, I said, or people should be able to opt out of funding them voluntarily, just like any other worker. That's what I would do anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with both of those sentiments. If you're going to have something like a public sector, about the only way that public sector could work from an ethical perspective is through volunteering, more so than voluntary action alone, because it'd be very hard to have the motivations would change. If it's completely volunteer, then it becomes much more altruistic in nature rather than a way of gaining money. And that is, again, by design. But unfortunately, the system is not designed that way because very few people are willing to give up absolutely everything. And those that are not usually necessarily quite affluent or capable of surviving without some form of income. And it'd be very difficult to both manage the country and be on full payment or full-time job.
Yeah, and see, that's one of the fun points is the fact that essentially they live off of everybody, but they can't live like at all less than anybody. And that's the fun part, is when you realize the inequities inherent in that. Finian says wife is looking for anesthetist universities. Portland, Oregon has one. Jeremiah, Oregon Health and Science University. Yeah, well, and I might be moving there soon. I might be sticking around here. It all depends on whether or not this guy is going to come through for me. We'll see about that. I'm in talks. We might move out that way once her BSN is done. Cool. Well, if you do, looks like everybody's northwest bound, so that's good. Owen Schroyer, Roger Stone taken down on YouTube. That's something Patient Zero in our Discord just said. So that's interesting. And and Minark said Roger's a fed and a clown anyways, which I can agree to. Those are two very diverse professions. One must not pay well. Yeah, definitely. Well, and he also says lawmakers writing laws is like celebrities writing books. Yep. Yeah.
Everything's ghostwritten, people.
And
except when it's an author.
And to Finian, something didn't necessarily fall through. It's just mostly a fact of making sure it's solid before I make any plans. I've got this potential offer to move just 2 cities over, or 2 towns over. and for 375 a month. So there's a possibility I'll be taking that, even though I would prefer to be where it's better. But CJ says I'm actually leaving the Pacific Northwest soon. Well, you know, you win some, you lose some. I've got a bunch of people that are moving up there right now, so maybe it's just the fact that it's summer and Southern California is on fire. So anyway, anybody have anything they need to say before we X out the stream for a moment?
I think that's all I've got.
I've only got one last thing, only because it just popped up as a Google notification. Apparently, Trump's come out saying, probably on Twitter, that if he ever got impeached, the market would probably crash, which I found quite unusual. That is probably true. That's the unusual thing. I can't actually fault the statement.
Well, because he's rigged the market at this point to thank him for weakening it. It's like the fucking, again, I hate him. I think he's a smug, condescending, stupid prick. But his cover of the fucking inequalities between the jobs gained and lost under Trump's campaign and regime is actually relatively spot on. Like those aluminum jobs, which were like in the hundreds or the thousands or something, costing thousands of jobs. So, I mean, it is probably true that people are having faith and confidence in Trump's ability to stay in. And so if he was successfully, like if the impeachment proceedings went through and he was successfully made not president, the economy would probably fail. But, that's not going to happen. Like I've been saying, he's going to get 4 more years. It's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Democrats are blue, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's so wrong. I'm sorry, but they should be red. They should embrace the color of their particular philosophy. Anyway, there isn't going to be a blue wave. I don't see one on the cards. I haven't seen even a trend.
0% chance of it happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's been scandal after scandal after scandal now coming out on top of scandals that already existed to make the DNC look foolish. And the amount of press coverage that they're getting that's starting to feel more negative is, I mean, don't get me wrong, the press coverage about Trump is still negative as well, but it's starting to come out in equal volume almost. I think that they're having to produce even more stories on a regular basis just to make sure that Trump is on top of the bad news for the U.S. Quota, shall we say? That's the wrong term, but they're in the leaderboard basically with Trump followed by DNC. I don't think quota is
a horrible word for it either.
It does feel like the quota sometimes. Like we need to make sure there's 121 different stories about how bad Trump as president is.
Well, he's not. He's not a bad president. He's managing the corporate fascism perfectly.
Oh, I know he is. That's what I mean. He's playing the system exactly like it's designed to be played. And he's doing it better than anybody I have ever seen do it. Not for the people, but just as a president. I've never seen somebody be able to manipulate so many companies and groups just with a few tweets. To me, it's incredible how he's managed to cast so many strings out and get people to dance to his tunes. It's just odd.
Just on that note, there is something mighty Pied Pipery about it.
Yeah, it really is. I'm just waiting to see when he starts bringing out like a little whistle and all the rats start running out of fucking DC. I mean, that'll take probably 50 years for that particular process to complete for that song, but hey.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's doing the opposite thing. I think if anything, what he's doing is bringing more rats in and more ardent rats, the rats that are willing to get their hands dirty.
I think he's just bringing. I would agree. He's just bringing in different rats, but that's politics, mate.
His rats.
Yes, and why not? I don't think that he's incorrect for doing so. It's again highly logical solution to those problems. It's just got to make sure that none of those rats get subverted from what he wants if he wants to keep his position.
Mm-hmm.
But hey,
And on that,
just
Are you ready to wrap, gentlemen?
yep,
yes.
pretty much. Bad morning to y'all. Bad rest of your day. Smash the state and fuck the system. And fuck you, YouTube, you diseased, rotting carcass of a fuck boat.
Have a bad morning, everybody.
We'll be seeing you.